I believe that now we can start. So we are social links, as some of you may have not interacted with our company or with our content with our webinars previously. My name is Ivan. I'm a senior OSINT analyst at our Center of Excellence. And today with us, we have the brilliant Gary Riddle, former British military intelligence, currently a private intelligence operator and consultant who also has a great YouTube channel on different tech intel type of stuff. And today we are going to be exploring the topic of the implications of artificial intelligence in modern intelligence and investigations, and specifically OSINT. So now, Gary, we would give a few words to you if you could tell us about your previous experiences with this type of thing in the other types of worlds that you have worked in within your career. And then after a few minutes, we're going to go into a live tech demonstration of how this could work within real world scenarios. And then we're going to go to the Q&A part. So yes, please go ahead.
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. Great to be here. And nice to see so many people attending as well. As Ivan said, my name is Gary Riddell. I'm a former member of both the Royal Navy as a communications specialist and then military intelligence. And these days I do cyber threat intelligence for organizations around the world. As Ivan said, I have a YouTube channel where I teach some of these things. And It's sort of a newsletter and a LinkedIn where I try and engage with people and educate them on just a lot of the things that are going on in both OSINT and cybersecurity. I think AI is obviously buzzword of the year, right? It's the big boom, and it's changing everything for me professionally. I'm seeing AI in my tools these days creeping in, and as a creator as well. I see AI, ChatGPT and all those things uh, coming into play, and it's super useful. And I'm really here to sort of see what social links can do with AI. I've seen some of it, but I know Ivan is going to really sort of pull it out of the bag for us. In my day, which feels like yesterday, but actually it's 10 years ago in the military, there was no AI, obviously, and everything was very manual. We did have things like I2 Analyst Notebook, Maltego did exist, but all that stuff was very much in its infancy. It may as well have just been, we would have used PowerPoint for a lot of graph analysis and things like that, heaven forbid. So things are coming on really, really fast. AI is going to be so exciting for people especially in cyber investigations or OSINT investigations, fraud and things like that, because it's just going to make things so much faster, more accurate, easier, more accessible for everyone involved, and really just change the landscape, hopefully for the better. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Ivan and the team are going to show us here. Is that fair enough to say, Ivan? Over to you.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you for the intro. So let's go over to the technical part. Again, as usual, for those of you who are new to seeing everything from our company, we're going to give a brief overview of how not our specific software, but those types of software, ELP, entity, link, property type generally work, with several initial simple examples with phone numbers, emails, and usernames. And then we're going to gradually continue to computer vision and natural language processing capabilities. So whenever we have a type of input element, there is a number of methods that are available to launch from it, such as this phone number. From this, we find an entity within Truecaller and an entity within the social links identity search engine that eventually lead us to the Facebook account of Mr. Caesar Campbell here. In terms of the background topics, which are going to be the basis for the data in our today's exploration of the main theme, they are going to be related mostly to territorial disputes and to organized crime in New Zealand, which is very, very interesting to study. So in the second example, our input is an email address that belongs to an American software developer who some people think is the real person behind the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. For various reasons, this may be true, this may be not true, but here right now we're looking at just specific data points that can be gathered from this type of identifier. So we receive a gravatar profile with a photograph. We receive again SLIC entities. We get an account within Skype that gives us the broad location of Malta, and we see the platforms where the person has registered accounts, and the sum of those the sum, meaning all of those platforms put together, can be considered, among other things, a characteristic of the personality of the owner of the email, which can potentially be useful at some points of the real investigation. So now on to the facial search capabilities. One of the two aspects of computer vision. So specifically at social links, what we have is facial recognition and object detection. Object detection at this moment applies to automobiles and firearms. And in the not so far from now time frame, it's going to be also extended to flags and masks. In terms of facial recognition, let's look at several examples with 4 very different gentlemen. So we have 2 people with Interpol red notices issued to their names. And we have their full names, their photographs, dates of birth. And based on the full names and photographs, we're going to see if we will find anything within social media. So let's try Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Actually, one of the frequent questions that we get for the last couple of months is how are we going with all of the new X Twitter type of limitations, pun intended, on on the capabilities of gathering data from there. Here we see that this photograph is somewhat newer. This specific profile is more than 10 years old at this point in time. And further, once we get the account, we can look into some interesting details, see who the account follows and who is it followed by, if there are any posts, and if any of the following is mutual. And whether any of the metadata in a broad sense of that word within the aspects of digital presence of the followers and followees somehow correlates with the initial materials that we get. Like in this case, the only account that is being followed by the currently not so active profile of Killian Riggio, which was created in 2012. And in this photograph, they seem to be much younger and looking a bit different. There is one profile that has the stated location of Thionville. That's a small town in France. And that was actually the town of residence for this person before. Now, in the second instance, we
Ivan,
have...
sorry, just before you go on to the second one, that was really fast. Like to go from that picture of the red notice to that completely other picture was, for all intents and purposes, instantaneous. How can you explain somehow like how that happens so quickly? What's going on behind the scenes there, like technologically?
The models that this is based on, which we are not going to disclose, it's not as if there's something specifically shady there, but they are trained on vast amounts of synthetic and public data. Nothing is stored. In case anybody wants to ask questions about our similarities to other vendors, we work in a slightly different way. And then we look for the possible matches within the sources that we have available with a full name or a username, in this case, the full name being as a helping second criteria, a helping second logical point for the model. And it does give us a probability rate. In the instance with Mr. Reggio here, apparently, no, it doesn't. 56 because they look a bit different, but it is verified that it is Mr. Reggio. And further, if we think that this direction of thought within the scope of the research seems to be interesting, then we can pivot further from those contacts within the social media, as well as from a username that the person has within specific platforms. So right now we can use Darkowl, which is an optional addition to Social Links Pro and another independent vendor. They're quite good in working with dark web type of stuff. Many people use them for cyber threat intelligence, but they can be used for general purposes as well. Like right now from Regio 57310, we have found the email address. 57310 is actually, by a coincidence that might be interesting to somebody at Interpol or the local LEA who were looking into this person, this matches with like a local specific index of their residential property. Well, in their previous life, maybe. So now we can further look at this, enrich it in the same way as we did with the email of Mr. Adam Back in the previous example. And while results are being loaded, we have another one, Mr. Elmer Barahona, who is wanted in El Salvador, apparently for terrorism, if I remember correctly. And here we have one delayed entity, which is supposed to eventually give us a profile within TikTok. So the fact that we have received it here within the graph means that there is an active profile. And from Mr. Reggio's email, up to this point, we see that there are accounts existing connected to it within Samsung, Spotify, and Twitter. So now let's stop that machine and go to our next examples. The next one, Mr. Farukh Faizimatov, is a national of Tajikistan who is currently under active OFAC sanctions. And another entity that is stated on the official source is this Bitcoin address that we have within the graph. And Mr. Faizimatov is active in the media field in assisting from a media perspective of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, which is one of the many factions fighting between one another in Syria. And this specific Bitcoin address is featured in their Telegram channel, which is owned by this account, or was owned by this account, because things can change dynamically, of course, especially with that lifestyle. So now we're going to see if we can find anything in conventional social media, anything of substance. So perhaps, surprisingly, this gives us an account within Instagram quite fast, with the same stated name written in Cyrillic, because Cyrillic writing is quite spread in Tajikistan and in Central Asian republics, because they were formerly part of the Soviet Union. And for the same reason, we also find an account within VK. And from both of those, we can subsequently extract additional details to see whether there are perhaps any connections that this person has that may be interesting in one way or another, any groups and pages, any communities that they're a part of, any content that they have posted, from which we can further go into geointelligence type of exercise, imagery intelligence types of exercise that Harry often posts in his LinkedIn account, and it's always cool to see people going through those. And this is our third example. Oh, additionally, a Facebook account has also been recovered, which we can see here. So now the last thing that we would be looking at is this photograph here, which belongs to a colleague, actually, of Mr. Adam Back from our previous example. So let's take an additional search profiles by face entity, input the name, which we can see within the Google ID derived from the Gmail, and input the URL to this photograph within the Google account. And run searches into Facebook and a place where they are more likely to be than the other three people, LinkedIn, as well as maybe MySpace. It's actually, some people wonder, why do we have MySpace in general? And while it's not the most popular and not the most widely spread type of social media at this moment, it can be a source of interesting data if you find it there in general, because people tend to forget about their accounts. Other people tend to forget about their accounts that might be a part of their social circle and so on. But it's very Western countries specific, of course. So searching by just a face and a name is not the only thing that we can do. Other ones are, for instance, here from this photograph, that's a sample, a search by a face and a Facebook profile. So we search from a face that is present within this photograph where there are 4 faces belonging to 4 people, but we specifically search for the face of Mr. Aubrey Winera. And we see those photographs, one or several of which, well, yes, mostly they are photos within the profile of a relative. And the original photograph is present in one of their Facebook albums. So searching by a face and profile, whether a face of a person is present within the whole profile of another person is also possible and is also another way. Another one is searching by a face, and group. Here we have the group Wano Fluence. Wano is I'm not sure if Maori is the correct way to call it, but in general, the language or the group of dialects belonging to the indigenous people within New Zealand. In their language, it means something like extended family. And this specific group is owned by a person who is a social worker and at the same time a family member of one of the senior members of the Mongrel Mob Gang, which is the most famous one, with the red, angry, aggressive bulldog on their logos, which are patched onto the clothing of those people or reflected in tattoos as part of the symbols of belonging to that specific group. And they have created this community as a very unusual, as part of a very unusual effort to have constructive dialogue between various types of members of society, because the person interacts with government officials and the person obviously interacts with the people that are affected by the policies and whose actions affect the society. And within this group, there are several people that are mentioned and their photographs being present. And using this entity, Facebook search profiles by face and group, we input the URL to a photograph and the ID of the group, and we actually find this specific person, their Facebook account. Now, there are 2 additional methods. One of them also extends to Instagram, and it allows to search photographs by a face and a specific location, such as a venue or a certain geotag, and searching by face and page. But unfortunately, due to a bad coincidence, they're on maintenance today. but that's actually a fast thing. As we're talking a lot about Facebook, we're going to briefly show another new addition that we've been asked a lot about during the past several years that we have finally added, which is Facebook Marketplaces. So based on a profile, we can get the marketplace positions, which can be the currently available items or already sold items, and further get the specific details from them, such as the designated location, and see how that fits into the whole investigative logical picture that we have about the person in question. So one of the things that we see is that all of them have been tagged within this location in Western Australia, where this person is stated to be living, but originally they're from New Zealand. We can further try to look at some of the properties of those objects, such as the specific texts, the price, and the timestamps, to see at what point in time a person was selling something, perhaps what was that something, and how that fits into the whole picture. So right now we're extracting the GPS stamps and the timestamps. Now, we're going to briefly go through examples with using natural language processing for sentiment analysis and social listening. It can be very, very instrumental. Well, it is very instrumental. For example, when we're talking about civil government organizations and law enforcement agencies alike, measuring sentiment, measuring the tone of voice, looking for red flags such as hate speech and aggressive speech within the public space. This example that we're looking at now is related to the sentiment in the comments of multiple YouTube videos dedicated to the topic of the territorial dispute that Philippines has with Malaysia around the Zulu Island. And here, what we get is a more or less structured map that gives us a picture of which accounts are the most active and which is the location that the accounts from which, attributed to which, is the most widely spread. So we can see that the accounts from Philippines, at least within the scope of this set of data, are a bit more active than accounts within Malaysia. But there is also an activity of accounts stating their locations to be United States or Indonesia. And now here we have a fuller picture after the application of ChatGPT object-specific sentiment measurement. So I say object-specific because we can look at it from the general tone of voice, but as one of my colleagues, who is one of our product owners, likes to put forward this example, if we are looking at a sentence, Joe Biden is a horrible president, Donald Trump is good, then within that specific sentence, well, if it could be classified as negative or as positive, but it would most likely be classified as overwhelmingly negative, more than 60% negative, because there are more words in a negative connotation towards the first object within the sentence. Whereas with the object specific, we see what is the target of a certain positive, negative, or neutral public message. And we can further go deeper into the analytical procedures and try to see whether accounts from a specific cluster attributed to a specific location are more active in spreading generally negative or positive messages, or even a specific cluster within that whole category can be connected logically to the positive or negative. Now we will try to do this live. let's say hashtag fentanyl crisis. Let's take just those Instagram posts and choose detect object sentiment, get topics, and get offer to see if there will be a pattern of some accounts being more active than other ones. And yes, while we are doing all of that, all of those wonderful, exciting things, my colleague has just launched a poll where we, of course, encourage you to answer that for clarity in how we can be mutually useful. I see that there are already some questions in the chat. And we will go over to the Q&A section after the middle part, after we're done with the technical part of the demonstration. So, of course, if we are working with those types of volumes of data, this would take more than just more time and more cognitive effort than just pushing several buttons to get this picture with this humongous tech porn graph. To actually filter through it, decide which points are key, which clusters are the most important, and how to further work with them, and in what combination and in what sequence. Right now, we are still at the phase of data collection and the partial structuring of that data. So, yes, while we are waiting for the whole thing to load, Gary, I think perhaps it would be quite great if you could perhaps comment on some of the aspects of what I was talking about, perhaps how this can benefit an analyst from your previous professional perspective and current professional perspective, like the different features and the different technologies that we were discussing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the step change in AI is just it's just incredible. Like the fact that you can have, ChatGPT analysis plugged into, this platform, into Maltego, and then through into social links is just a game changer, right? It changes the game for these investigations in the same way that it changes the game for writing a blog post or whatever. It just becomes, 100 times easier. Um, and when I think back to the manual processes that I used to do just 10 years ago, big whiteboards with rulers and marker, drawing lines between things, printing pictures out, sticking them on a wall, like in the movies, and a Sherlock Holmes movie or something, they have that wall with all the string between it. That was the world that I lived in. And even trying to go any deeper than that was just incredibly manual. If you had to go searching through sentiment analysis on Twitter, you would have to, you know, physically go onto Twitter and like read through all the tweets and like make notes about positive versus negative and try and count things. Here it's just baked right into the platform and it's a few clicks away, basically, with, as you said, with the Biden Trump, bit, you'll always run into some amount of issues, but it is amazing. And I think, the facial recognition side of it uh, is fantastic. I told you about this before, Ivan. I was on a job somewhere in the world in my previous vocation, and we were meeting people. They were coming into the meeting. I was photographing from a concealed position. We would then take all the photographs from people entering into the meeting and then compare that with our database of bad people that we want to detain. But it was manual and it took, hours to go through it all. Um, with the power of AI, undoubtedly you're able to just do it almost in an instant, just load all that data in and bang, there it is, there's the result. Uh, and one of the people that we would have been interested in speaking with, shall we say, after that meeting got away because it took so long to match the faces up. Someone turned up whose face matched, and it wasn't until later that evening that we had the chance to even realize. So yeah, I think AI and these tools is just incredible, and what what you guys are doing with it is absolutely commendable. So yeah, nice work.
Yes, thanks a lot. Our team values that very much. It's always nice to hear. Coming on to another type of application of natural language processing, that is named entity recognition. And a graph that we're looking here is a somewhat filtered and structured logical map of interactions between several categories of entities between each other, which was initially based on names associated with the gentleman in the center who was accused by the US authorities to be part of an international drug syndicate, specifically people linked to Hezbollah activities from Lebanon and from Palestine, who were within the business of facilitating the import of various drugs, but mostly cocaine, of course, from Latin American countries, specifically from Venezuela. And we didn't go into social media. We went into several types of sources that are a bit more on the corporate side, such as Sanctions Explorer and OCCRP Aleph, and also WikiLeaks, which was available within our software until a short time ago, and further extracted the key entities from within the text from those, and then did some filtering and ran additional searches from those other entities. And this is kind of a weighted map that we have where this implies, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to convey my thought in the right way, that if an analyst or a team of analysts is working in a data space, for example, that is comprised of many types of previously written reports, previously written documents, provided they are structured in a logical enough way, and provided they are trustworthy enough, those types of usage of actually processing the data that is extracted, processing the data that is extracted from existing pieces of intelligence that are structured in a certain way, can give more insights for further deepening the understanding of the phenomenon or phenomena that is being investigated.
Yeah, that's something I was looking at recently, actually, like because there's been a few big, like the Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers, but I think recently there was some other stuff that got leaked. And back when those things first leaked, I bought the book and I read the book. But wouldn't it be cool if you could just dump all that data into a tool, whatever that might be, and then just ask it, tell me interesting things about this data, and then it just tells you like a story, right? It writes the book for you in a way. That's the sort of end goal, right? You don't have to mess around with opening PDFs or manually reading anything. The machine just does it for you and understands everything. It's yeah.
Yep. It is quite amazing. That is absolutely true. So another instance of using computer vision, which we forgot to mention today that we are going to go through, will be object detection. So I'm just taking another sample that we have. I think we have touched on this in one of our previous online events, but let's look at it anyway right now, just within the scope of AI applications. So we have a number of Facebook accounts which have content, part of which is visual content. So if we are talking about thousands or even hundreds of photographs, it would be quite valuable for the analyst to see which ones of them are more interesting, and if those accounts are interesting at all in general. And one way to do that would be, depending on the context, to see if any of those contain a specific types of objects, such as automobiles or firearms, as we have said. Now, those accounts are related to networks within Facebook that are related to the relatives of the leadership of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. And here we see some photographs that feature firearms and some photographs which feature automobiles. And we can further look at that. And if we see that there is an indicator there, and as with the other ones, we can see that there is a probability rate being assigned to the results of a specific query that is using that AI capability, and research it further. Now, we will also give a brief overview of the general capabilities that Social Links Pro has in terms of social network analysis. So if we are looking at groups of accounts and we want to see whether they are connected in certain ways that are that may be obvious or that may be less obvious, and that is something where it gets, of course, somewhat more interesting. There are multiple ways for us to look for those types of intersections, whether those people like the same pages, whether those people are present in the same groups, whether those people have checked in within the same locations, so broader than the scope of whether they share any friends, perhaps. And one of the examples, again, returning to the topic of organized crime groups in New Zealand, the motorbike gangs, the inner culture of which very much resembles the indigenous Maori culture in multiple ways. So they have haka, they have the same type of hierarchical structure. They consider themselves as those extended families. There is even a portion, of course, of the ethnically based anti-colonial sentiment. And interestingly enough, that's something that can be found in many, in the activity and in the discourse within many specifically ethnic organized crime groups operating in different areas. And one observation that a person could make is that in places where there was a strong colonial past, and that it has left a large mark on their current existence, the OCGs tend to be much more associated and much more comprised of people from the disadvantaged groups in society, whereas in more nationalist types of countries and more nationalistically inclined types of countries with perhaps less of a colonial imprint or a significant colonial imprint, but with another type of outcome, those, or within the metropolis, actually, in a broad sense of the word, the OCGs can be more associated and be more integrated into the upper echelons of society. And that is where the phenomenon of the so-called subversive crime kicks in, where the OCGs are very, very intermingled with the white-collar type of world. So yes, this is a result of looking at a community, one of the communities within the New Zealand modern motorbike gangs topics, looking at which accounts were the most active in interacting with the content spread within this specific community to determine which are the most important nodes. And that logic, as we always outline, is applicable to all of the social media platforms with which our products can work in depth. So not limited to just Facebook. Facebook is just a rich enough sort of data for this specific phenomenon in New Zealand. So yes, I believe we are done with the technical overview part. Thank you all very much for your time.
I had a question on the image processing, Ivan. So you've got cars and guns. and faces, right, as well. I was just thinking, like in my CTI world, stacks of money and also drugs probably. Is it quite easy to train the machine to detect things? Can you just add things quite easily if you train it?
Yeah, I don't see why I don't see why that would be impossible. And as I said, the two categories of objects that we as a vendor are going to add into those capabilities are flags and masks. But the ones that you are talking about, stacks of cash, and maybe something like stacks of cash with jewelry, and uh, drugs, packaged drugs, unpackaged drugs, may also be of interest further on, of
Yeah, if
course.
I could just get a personal feed of the stacks of cash that are geotagged, just send it to me privately. I'll go pick it up.
Yes, certainly, certainly. So we already see a question of what is the cost of your services. That depends on what you refer to by services, and my colleague has already sent you a link to the request form, so hopefully you will contact us. So what would be a human trafficking or soliciting logo? Yeah, what exactly do you mean by that? You mean certain visual attributes that are related to, that can be connected to human trafficking activity? If this is widely spread and there is, well, yes. In general, within human trafficking investigations, I think that there are people who know better what, like the people at the Anti-Human Trafficking Initiative, at Trace Labs, and those types of groups. But yes, if it's a widely spread type of object, which is represented a lot in the public space on which we can train a model, uh, can see why that would not be doable, of course. And yes, of course, another very important thing to note within the context of the exploration of AI implications in modern intelligence, that the final interpretation and the final assessment and is left to the analyst, and the decisions on what to do further is left to the team to which the analyst belongs. So we're looking at this brief reports on the territorial issues with the Balochistan region, something between Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, where there is an ethnic group, where there is a stateless ethnic group, many of the representatives of which are obviously not very happy about it. It's one of the sources of data from which we took samples to explore in our previous webinar with Gary. Uh, and here we have initially the historical context, and the humanities part can be, from my subjective point of view, quite important in intelligence type of work and investigative type of work. Here we state the purpose and go into step-by-step searches within Telegram and TikTok, and see whether there is any type of pattern, whether that pattern is interesting, and what conclusions can be drawn from it. So that is something that is left to the human, well, at least at this specific point in time, before AI become our overlords, which we may not even notice, as they will likely be much more sophisticated, of course, by that point. Just joking. Hopefully that won't happen. So can I use object detection on satellite imagery to detect differences? I think that's not something that we have at the moment, but I believe there are certain projects working with, for example, different types of terrain where that could be applied. And I have occasionally encountered false positives when trying to use AI investigations. Has this been something you've encountered in developing the system, and how are you trying to reduce them? So very good question. We don't have a lot of time left at the moment. If you want to discuss that in depth and how that can be applied to your work specifically, how that can help you, how we can help each other, then by all means, write us at OSINT@sociallinks.io. We can discuss that in more details.
There's a question about social links. Does it have a feature to profile cybercrime threat actors, for example, ransomware affiliates? I mean, there's if you the social links plugin you were looking at there is inside of Maltego. There's I think MITRE ATT&CK is built into like some of the plugins and stuff as well, Ivan. But I mean, do you guys track ransomware affiliates, or can you think of any use of some of your tools to help do that? Because I've never come across that myself, really.
Some of our clients are working specifically with that type of thing. If we are talking about profiling and, specifically digital profiling, then that is one of the things that would be possible. I will show a framework of how that could be done in general. Here it was something that we've showcased in an online event with Mr. David Alley from Darkel, which was dedicated, among other things, to cyber threat actors. So here is what it could look like from a theoretical point of view. So we have an individual, the specific identity of whom we do not know. What do we have? We have their username. What can we have in general? Their username, the posts and threads if they're active on specific dark web forums, something like that. The products that they are offering, whether those products can be fit into a smaller number of categories, whether the topics contain contact details, whether they contain certain speech patterns and region-specific or ethnically specific idiosyncrasies, which can sometimes be quite interesting. And the payment methods, whether those contain any cryptocurrency addresses, whether those are mentioned anywhere, featured anywhere in existing reports by vendors or organizations specialized in that, whether the specific types of product categories that we're looking at, or the speech patterns, or the stated shipment locations within the product, such as on the Tor network marketplaces, or the stated or observed affiliations are affinitive to a specific region or macro region, and what that can tell us about. The reflection of the personality of the threat actor in their online behavior, which was very much a thing when the joint group from American free labor agencies were looking into Alexandra Casas, who was eventually arrested for running Alphabay, which was one of the loudest, most resonant types of cases described also in Mr. Greenberg's book that we touched on during our last webinar. That is a thing, and that is an important thing. And doing all of those actions and doing them in a thorough, in-depth way, as much as it is possible, because obviously there won't always be an abundance of data. Otherwise, it would be much easier and much less people would be asking those questions. But when we do it as hard as possible, as thorough as possible, within the scope of the data and the information that we possess, this leads us to building something that can be called a digital profile, working based on which further can make us more efficient in eventually uncovering the identity. So several more questions that we see. Yes, the one about ransomware. Do original news sources from other languages such as Mandarin, Russian, Arabic, etc. have any relevance in those searches? For example, a mention of the searched individual organization group in such news media to bring in more info. Yes, yes, there is no limitation in terms of languages, specifically with OpenAI integrations, which are one of the things that we use. This can work on many different languages, on many different human languages, on many different documented human languages, because there are more interesting phenomena, especially if we come back to the topic of organized crime group research. Like in South Africa, there is the numbers gangs, or there are the numbers gangs, which are split into several categories, whose history is close to 100 years, which are very prison-based, and that's a common thing for organized crime in general, but they are very, very, very prison-based. even more so than those such as MS-13 or the Mongrel mob or anything else. And they have actually developed their own language, meaning a set of linguistic ontology, I'm not sure how to put it the correct way, that is based on the indigenous dialects, on Afrikaans, on Dutch, and on English, which is not distinguishable to people outside that group, and that is required to be known for people in order to enter that group, along with either a ritual murder or a ritual rape. That's so the language aspect. Those types of languages will probably not be discerned at the moment. If we encounter extraterrestrial presence and if we start to document their language and try to explore it like it was in one of the great fabulous movies of the Canadian director Denis Villeneuve, then it will probably take us some time to be able to work with their languages using AI modules. But in general, yes, Arabic, Cantonese, Russian, anything else, absolutely doable. So yes, we can. Yes. Perhaps if there are any more questions that we might have at this point, or Gary, if there would be something else that you would like to add in order to summarize today's event.
No, I mean, I think it's cool, such a cool thing to watch, and I'm glad. I mean, I wish I could go back in time with this technology. It would be like, going back 10 years with this would be like going back 100 years with knowledge of the stock market, right? Like it's just, yeah, seeing all these different AI capabilities come out and be built into these tools is just awesome. And I'm glad I've got, maybe 15, 20 more years in the industry to use them and do this stuff and see it advance. Hopefully when my kids are bigger and they're entering the workforce, AI is just business as usual and it's just everywhere. And yeah, long may it last, really. I don't see it as a threat. I see it as a tool to make things faster, easier, better for everyone. But we'll see, right? Watch this
Yep.
space.
And since at the last webinar that we've had with you, Gary, we've been recommending books at the end of the events. I'll briefly show one, which is a study into the concepts and the phenomenon of cyber terrorism by the Korean Criminology Institute. So it actually delves into the concepts from the Western military doctrine of cyberspace being the fifth domain. It looks at it and merges that in like in the sense of academic exploration with the current academic definitions of terrorism, which is organized violence pursuing a political goal. One of the cool illustrations we can see here, but just due to this Criminology Institute being Korean, is a multi-dimensional board for Go, or Baduk, as it is known there, and that is something that is directly related actually to the topic of AI, as a human was beat in chess by IBM's Deep Blue, with Kasparov in the 90s, and nobody believed that a human would be beat in Go. And then it happened in 2016 in Korea with the great Korean master Lee Sedol, and the amounts and volume of investments specifically in Northeast Asia into AI and machine learning has skyrocketed after that point. But one interesting thing is that Mr. Lee Sedol has won one game out of 5, and the reason why people think that is that he used a strategy that is considered very unusual and very risky among human professional players. So something that is less obvious to the machine, however sophisticated it may be at that point, and something that confuses it.
Very clever.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody, for attending today's event. Thank you, Gary, for co-hosting this with us. It was quite cool, as was the last time. And we're hoping to see you on our further events, both online and offline, one of which we're currently having on Millipol in France and many other conferences that we're going to attend in the coming months and coming years. And hoping that this was interesting and helpful. Thanks a lot, and good luck to all of you, and have an excellent remainder of the week and the weekend. Goodbye.
Peace.